All right. I think we're going to get going and we'll let everybody else work their way in. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. My name is Tash Evans. I am VP of Customer Growth at Hook. I've been in customer success for around about 10 years now, and most recently have started hosting this wonderful podcast called The Monthly Sync. We run this every single month, but today is a bit of a different special edition all about success planning. So today we're going to talk a little bit about what's the point of a success plan? How do I build one? How do I test this? How do I run it after? What does great look like? All of those good questions. And I really hope that this is going to be very helpful. I want to know at the end if you found it helpful. And if so, like what else can we run these kinds of sessions on? I'm a big, big fan of success planning, and hopefully you'll feel a little bit about that today, and you'll learn a little bit about why and why it's such a cornerstone of what my customer success motion is that I build in my kinds of CS teams, but what also exists for many. It seems as a bit of a traditional CS activity, the old success plan, but I think it's a little bit misunderstood, and that is what today is all about. My intention today, so normally when I'm hosting these webinars and these podcasts, normally I'm the host and I have a couple of guests on. Today's a little bit different. Mostly it's just me. And my intention is to deliver this to you guys just as if I was delivering it to my team. We'll see how long it takes. I'm hoping to leave tons of time for questions at the end, but we'll also make it interactive. So I'm going to ask questions of you guys as we go, and we'll take time for questions as we go through too. You'll see a Q&A box. So the wonderful Eliza is going to help me manage the Q&A as we go through. She might answer some of the questions in there for you, but she'll pause me as I'm in my crazy excited success plan flow. She'll pause me as we go through and shout out any questions. So let's get started, shall we? I'm going to start with this. There is no perfect success plan, no perfect mutual success plan, customer success plan, whatever you call this. And so my first message to this group is like, don't stress yourself. I've built hundreds of these over the last few years. I'm still iterating on my process as I go through it. I still sit with my team now and I go into calls with customers and I build these. And sometimes I'll go and look back and go, why did I write that as an objective? Like, that's obviously a goal. You weren't thinking bigger picture enough. And so my first message here is like, don't tie yourself into knots. There is no perfection here, but there's definitely good success plans and there's bad success plans. And there's like a fairly nice framework that we can follow to make sure that this is easy enough for us to build, but also that we're getting to the outcomes that we want to, and we're meeting that. What is the point in building a success plan? And then again, that's kind of what this session is all about. So maybe let's start with big picture. Why do we do this? My first piece of advice here is if I'm a CSM, I want to stop thinking about a success plan as a KPI that I've got to hit or just a collection of the actions that me and my customer are working on right now. It is so much more than that. And so this is the first thing that I'm wanting you guys to think about. What is the point of a success plan? Well, for me, it's to tie everything I do back to business value. It's to understand what does that customer care about? What do they see as value? What's the pain that they're trying to solve? And this is my path to get there. And so why this helps me is it means that when I want to do something with a customer, maybe I've got a strategy I'm trying to do or a technique or a use case I'm trying to roll out, it helps me get their buy-in because I'm able to show them with this success plan, this is going to get us to that thing that you really care about, Mrs. Customer. But it also helps me manage expectations with my customers to make sure I'm only working on the things that are going to drive impact. So if my customer wants to work on a totally separate thing, this then allows me to have a conversation to say, I'm happy to reprioritize the things that we're working on. How does this piece fit into that objective that we're trying to get to, and how does it help us get there, and what are we willing to trade off, and do those things impact that objective more? If so, should we prioritize them first? So that's the first thing. It helps you link everything you're doing back to that value that you really care about. It also helps you show progress. So even if you're not managing to get to that end value goal, you're going to have some leading indicators along the way that help you see if you're being successful. And so this plan is going to help you demonstrate to your customer, even if you're not meeting the end objective, that you are influencing things that they really care about. And then importantly for us, this is my case for renewal. This should be the thing that I can put in front of my customer in 12 months' time and say, hey, we've met that objective. Let's have a conversation about renewal. And so this is the core way that I think about. I know I have built a great success plan if I can put this in front of my customer, and if we've achieved it, renewal is going to be a no-brainer and expansion is definitely on the cards. So this to me is the real value and the point of a success plan. And so then what does a success plan look like? How do I think about this in terms of visuals? Well, we're going to spend a few minutes on this because there's loads of frameworks out there that you can use, and I'm going to talk you through the framework that I use and why, but then I'm going to visualize this framework in a couple of different ways to help us get into that mindset of like, what's the point of this and how should I think about filling this out? So I like to use this framework. It's called an OGSM framework. So you'll notice there's an objective up the top, there's goals that help us meet that objective. There are strategies that we're going to deploy to meet those goals, and there are measures for those goals along the way. So OGSM, objective, goals, strategies, and measures. I think sometimes when you're first filling a success plan out, it can be a little bit daunting. Like you're on the call with a customer and they're giving you loads of great information and you're like, oh, where does this go? Is this a goal? Is this a strategy? Is this an action? Which one should I be measuring? And so I want to talk you through a couple of different ways that I'm visualizing the information that the customer is giving me in my head, or I'm visualizing the plan in my head to help me figure out which pieces of information go where when I'm formulating this success plan. And then, by the way, what we'll do is we'll just sit and build one together so that you can see how I go through that. So perhaps the way that I should be thinking about this, let me go back one, this framework. So perhaps the way I should be thinking about it is a little bit different. And maybe I'm going to think about it like this. So the first thing that I'm encouraging you to think about is this is your path to value. This is my terrible attempt at having a map up here, but hopefully it does the idea justice. I'm thinking about where am I now? Where do I need to get to with this customer? And that's really important that you define that right, because that's the thing that they're going to sign off. The CFO is going to sign off. Some economic buyer is going to sign off for renewal. Where do I need to get to? And how do I build a really sensible path to help myself get there? Now, the reason that I think about it in a map format, I'm going to explain to you first like a really great coaching methodology that I often think about when I'm thinking about success planning. During my leadership journey, somebody gave me some really great advice about coaching. And they said, hey, the point in coaching is that you ask questions to help people find their way on their own. And this methodology is thinking about, imagine you get a phone call from a friend and they are lost in the woods. You're not with them. You can't see where they are. You can't see what's around them. And so the idea is you have to ask them questions to be able to give them the best possible advice to help them get out of the woods and help them find their way home. So you're asking questions like, what can you see? What options do you have? Are there any obstacles? Is anything making you worried about that path? And I always think of that same coaching methodology when I think about a success plan. You don't know the end goal. Like you need them to tell you. You also don't know the milestones and the markers to get there. You don't know all of the strategies. Like you might know some of them. You might have some really good suggestions. But these are the kinds of questions that we need to be asking our customer to help us populate this plan, to help us get to that end goal. And so it's where are we going and why do we care about going there? Because you're going to need to remind them of that when they get lost along the way and when not every path is the right path. And so we're gonna think about this analogy as we go through, as we think about building out the objective and the goals and the strategies and the measures. What are the questions that we're asking our customer to help us figure out the best plan, the best path to get us to that value or to that objective? And so again, that's the things that I'm thinking about when I'm building out this visual of a success plan. The other way that my brain visualizes this, because this is obviously written out in a bit of a let's say like an Excel format. I've got my goals, then next to it I've got my strategies, next to it I've got my measures. How do I think about all of this? Well, the other way that my brain visualizes this is as if it's a pyramid. So you've got your objective up top. So that's the key thing that you're driving towards. And then your goals are going to be what helps you hit that objective. So your goals have to directly link to the objective. And then your strategies link to each individual goals. And then how do you know if you've hit the goal? Well, you need a measure along the way. And so there's this like golden thread that you should be able to look at any strategy on your success plan and immediately see how that strategy is going to help you hit that goal and how that goal is going to help you hit that objective. And a strategy is different to an action. You're going to have loads of actions to do with your customer to deploy that strategy, but that sits a little bit different. And we're going to explore a little bit of that as we go through this webinar today. So that's a little bit of context on how I am thinking, how my brain's thinking as I'm going through building this success plan. And so what we're going to do now is we're just going to work our way through the 4 different components of the OGSM model, so objectives, goals, strategies, measures, and we're going to build out a success plan together as we go. So the first thing that we want to get is we want to get our objectives. Now, an objective is a business level objective. So this is not, hey, I want to get to 80% adoption with your tool. That is not a business level objective. This is something that is being actively discussed, that is actively cared about at that C-suite and that business level. So this is usually the kinds of things that are being talked about in board meetings or on your company all hands for your customers or at their kickoff for the year at the leadership level. And so good examples of these that you'll see on the screen are, hey, I really care about our business being profitable at the end of the year, or I care about tripling our revenue, or we want to make sure that our NRR gets to 120% because that's a metric that the board really cares about, or that the ELT really cares about for the next fundraise. This is something that they care about at the top level. Now, I'm sure as I'm talking through this, you might be thinking to yourself, okay, Tash, great, but like, how do I go get this info? Sometimes I'm asking questions to my customers and they don't want to give me this information, or I haven't been handed this information from my sales team. Where do I go get this information from? Well, the first thing is, as a really great AM or CSM, you have to always do deep discovery and you have to be genuinely curious and asking really good questions with your customers. Secondly, you can't rely on having this information passed over from the sales team. Like, it's on us to go set meetings, create meetings with our customers to create success plans together. The way that you get buy-in to having that meeting, or maybe you've got the meeting and you're asking the questions and you're getting resistance, the best way to preempt this or to combat this is to give context. Context is king. You've got to tell your customer why. So if you're ever going onto a meeting and you're like, yep, I'm going to build a success plan, I'm going to ask them what their key objectives are, and the customer's just really closed off and doesn't want to give you the answers, it's because we've not set enough context first. So we've got to tell them why we're asking them these questions and how it's going to benefit them. And so part of this is explaining to the customer that, hey, my role, Mrs. Customer, is to help you meet your business objectives and help you achieve your reason for buying our solution or our software. And to be able to do that properly, I'm going to ask you a few questions. And that's going to help me make sure I've properly mapped out exactly how I help you meet that objective. And the aim here is to build a solid plan that's going to help both of us hit those goals and make you look really good along the way, Mr. Customer, Mrs. Customer. And immediately you'll find when you're setting that context that your customer is going to be much more open to answering the questions or to finding the answers if they don't know them. So sometimes you may get on with your main stakeholder and they don't know the answers to these questions, or perhaps they're just not senior enough to know the answer to these questions. And so again, you need that buy-in to be able to get that a little bit higher. And again, context is king. So, okay, we know that an objective is something that's cared about at the business level. It's something that the C-level talk about, that they care about. It's something that you can put in front of the CFO or the economic buyer and say, we've achieved that, and therefore let's talk about renewal, let's talk about expansion. And we know that context is king. So, what kinds of questions should we be asking to try and uncover business level objectives? Kinds of questions should you be asking to get that kind of information? Well, here's a few of my favorites. So firstly, if you can, like, of course, we want to verify that from the sales process. Like, if we can get information from a sales handover, whether it's in a call or handed from your AE or your AM, like, let's present that back to the customer. I understood that this was the big objective for the business this year. Is this still the case? Has anything changed? But then I like to ask questions like, what's your mandate from the C-level in your role, and how are you going to measure that? What's the company's biggest priority right now? What are the things that are being talked about at the company all hands, or what's sitting on your company charter? Or what was the biggest thing that was talked about as a company goal at your revenue kickoff last week, or whatever your equivalent of that is? What's the one thing that everyone in your department is working towards? These are the kinds of questions that I'm asking to try and uncover a business level objective. You may not get the answer, the perfect answer to that first question. And so that's when you've got to be comfortable digging layers deeper and asking surrounding questions until you get to an objective that you really are happy with. So these are the types of questions that I'm asking. And hey, by the way, if you're watching this and going, oh, okay, I need to really quickly write down all these questions, or I need to screenshot the questions to ask for the objectives, don't worry. We'll send the recording. We'll make sure that you get access to a really cool guide that we've got written as a part of this. So you'll get all of this as a follow-up. So these are the types of questions that I'm going to ask. And so if we think about building a success plan together, I'm going to think about this from a hook perspective. Of course, you guys will have equivalents for your own technology. But for me, the kind of objective that I'm happy with is boost my NRR or my NDR above 120% ahead of our next fundraise. Great. That's something I feel really happy with, because if we've proved that we've impacted that, everyone internally in that business is going to be super happy. Awesome. So we've got our objective. The next thing to think about are goals. Now, you'll notice on this framework, I've left space for 2 or 3 goals. Don't get all caught up in how many goals you have. Like, it's okay to just have 2. You can have 4 or 5. Try not to have 10, because I think it'll be way too much to manage with a customer. Sometimes where I feel like I've got loads of goals and too much to work on, what I end up doing is creating like a short-term success plan with the customer and then a longer term one. So like, here's our prioritized list of things that we're going to focus on right now. And then here are the things that once we've done them, maybe sit on the back burner for us to come back to and worry about a little bit later. Because you can only do so much in one go. So I'm aiming usually for 2-3 goals for me and for my team. What is a really good goal? Well, the goal is the lever that you're going to pull to get to the objective. It could also be the thing that's stopping them from hitting their objective right now. So this could be things like, if I think about our net dollar retention example, what's stopping you from hitting your NRR goal right now? Oh, my churn's a big problem. How much of a problem is your churn? What's your goal and what's your target to improve it? Or it might be that actually churn's great, but upsell is a big problem for me. Maybe they're both a problem in terms of helping them get there. So this is where we want to think about what's one layer down in terms of what we could aim for to help them hit that objective. So again, some good examples of that aside from the churn might be, okay, well, I want to improve my upsell, or in order to hit my 3x revenue, pipeline is the thing that I need. And so I really need to go after improving my pipeline. Or the thing that's going to help me get to that objective is improving the efficiency in my team so that we can increase their workload and their capacity without hiring more heads. Things like that. And goals need to be specific and they need to be measurable. You need to have a way of knowing if you've hit that goal, because remember, that's the piece that you're sitting in front of the customer and saying, hey, Mr. Customer, this is what we've done together. Look at what we've achieved. How do we have that renewal and that expansion conversation? The other way that I think about goals and the measures of goals is that objective at the top. If we take that NRR or NDR increase to 120%, there are things that are outside of my control and outside of your control with a company level goal like that. There might be only a certain piece of the pie that your company and your use cases of applying your tech can really influence to hit that objective. And so sometimes we're a little bit nervous about being held accountable to that top level objective because what if we've done everything right, but something's gone wrong in the company, or they haven't executed, or they've changed their product and their customers don't like it, whatever it is that's outside of your control. But the goals should feel much more in your control. They should be the pieces that you can work on together. And therefore, measuring them, they should be really strong leading indicators that if we haven't hit your top objective, Mr. Customer, but we're on track with the goals, you can see the influence of our platform or the improvement in performance of what we have impacted. So that's why goals is really important, that they should be specific and they should be measurable. So then same thing, if I have my top level objective, how do I ask the right questions to make sure that I'm getting good goals that are specific enough and that are measurable? And so this is where I am asking genuinely curious questions around that objective that I now know. And I've got a bit of a cough, so you're going to have to excuse me. So that could be, what's stopping you from hitting that objective right now? It could be, what's your department's piece of that company objective? Or are there certain teams or geographies or functions that aren't operating as well that are preventing you from getting there? What OKRs have you been given that are going to help you hit that objective? Or has your department been given that's going to help you hit that objective? These are the kinds of questions that we're asking that tend to get us to the goals along the way. And so then when I've asked all these really good questions, I start to be able to populate my success plan just that little bit more. So in my example, I've got, okay, my objective is to boost my NRR or my NDR above 120% to put me in good stead for fundraise. Well, the things that are stopping me from getting there right now are my GRR in my scaled segment is not where it needs to be. And so like that should be something that we should work on improving because it's looking pretty good elsewhere. And if I improve that one thing, it has a really good impact on my NRR. And then maybe the second thing is actually, whilst my GRR everywhere else is looking really good, my upsell isn't great. And so I really need to focus on my upsell. And so maybe that's the second big thing that I'm going to work on with my customer. And remember, these right now, they're not measurable, but we're going to come back to that a little bit later on. And of course, like I'm using hook examples, but it's whatever your equivalent is for your software. So we've got a couple of goals in place. Now what we need to figure out together with the customer is, how are we going to hit our goals? What's the strategies that we're going to apply to go and hit them? So this for me is where your use cases for your software or your service really come in. How is that customer going to apply your software and your service to hit that goal? And what are you going to do together? By the way, sometimes it might not just be using your software or service. Sometimes you might be coaching the customer on some things that they have to do internally to help them hit that goal. But the way that I think about this is like, how am I going to help them? Why have they bought my software? What's my piece of the pie? What can we help them do to be able to go hit that particular goal? Be careful that you don't fall into the trap of writing actions in your strategies. And we're going to talk through some examples in a second. But these need to be use cases or applications to get to that goal. So some examples might be, well, actually, to help me get here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new incentives and new targets to make sure that I'm incentivizing this behavior that we're talking about. Or we're going to deploy this particular use case of our technology on this team and this segment to make sure that they hit that goal. Or it might just be that we're training an entire team on how to rework their day using your piece of software with the aim of hitting that goal. There's some good examples of strategies. And then again, if we think about what are the questions that I need to ask to get me there, I'm going deeper into that. what's stopping you from getting there right now? Which are the teams or the segments that are doing really well or not doing really well? And then this is where I ask a lot of questions about how they run their business right now. So I can figure out what's the best use case, what's the best application of my piece of tech to help them improve their process. So this is really where great CS discovery comes in, because I'm trying to understand what use cases I should suggest to them for using my piece of tech. But to know that, I need to know a little bit more about how their business operates and where they might be falling down right now and where they have areas of opportunity. Where are they working really well and they don't want to change that motion? Whereas where have they got capacity to do things a little bit differently? And so we ask a lot of how questions, and then we finish off with a lot of what if questions. Well, what if we did this through our tech? Or what would be the impact if we did it this way? Or now you have access to this piece of tech. What if we did X, Y, and Z? And this is where you're starting to get buy-in from the customer on the strategies that you're going to work on together to go and hit your goals. So in my example here, remember we've got an objective up the top, which is boost NRR or NDR above 120%. My two focus areas or goals are I want to improve my GRR in my scaled segment and I want to focus on upsell. Well, the strategies here are we're going to leverage Hook to build a digital customer journey that gets launched to all customers. We're going to launch a health score that's going to allow us to build the tech touch risk mitigation process that's going to allow us to see red accounts and go action them before they become really unhealthy. And so these are some of the strategies that I'm going to apply. There are actions that will sit underneath each of those strategies. Like you're not just going to launch a digital customer journey. There will be things that you need to do, like brainstorming what that journey looks like, sitting down with their marketing team, working out what the cadence content and the flows are. They're all actions. And be careful not to get caught into the trap of having your actions and your strategies. They sit separately. Now, you can manage those however you want. Like some CSMs like to manage the actions in an email, they like to manage them in a spreadsheet. That's totally up to you guys. I think about this like simpler format from a customer as I'm not fussed about having the actions on here because what I care about is having it documented what the plan is. My job's to hold us accountable and make sure we get there and make sure the actions get done. But this is one slide that might get socialized internally, and I want everyone to be able to see just super simply how they're using our tech to go solve their business objectives. And so then on the upsell side, it might be, hey, like use Hook to go build a business case that results in getting more upsells with fewer discounts. Or how do you leverage the upsell propensity score to be able to target accounts in the right way? They're strategies that we're using to apply Hook's tech to be able to go and solve their problems. And again, these are specific to me because it's the easiest thing to talk about, but you will all have equivalents in your world. The last piece of the puzzle here is we need really good ways of measuring this. This is how we know whether or not we've met the goal or whether or not we've influenced the goal or whether or not we've at least deployed the strategy and we're making some good progress. And I like to think about measures as being layers. Like I want a way of measuring whether or not I've got to the goal, but I also want to know leading indicators along the way. Because you want to know if you're on the right tracks. It's not like all of a sudden you're going to do all these things and click, like the measure for the goal is going to be hit and like your success plan is a success and off you go. If you have that scenario right now with your customers, like, well done, come talk to us. We all want to know how you're doing it. But the reality is like it doesn't always go that easily. You need some way of knowing along the way, like, am I making good progress? Is this working? Are we on track to hit our goal or at least influencing it? And so start to think about the way you're collating your measures in your success plan as being layered. What's the lagging indicator I'm aiming for? So like the end result. And then what's the leading indicator? What's a way of measuring if we're on track and if we're making good progress? So some good examples here might be, I have improved my GRR by 3 percentage points. That's a lagging indicator. But a leading indicator for that might be, well, to know I'm on track to improving my renewal rate, I might want to see that I've improved a ton of the health scores. So a leading indicator measure might be, I've moved X million of red renewing accounts into green as a health score, for an example. Or an even like earlier leading indicator might just be, hey, we've launched this new digital adoption play. I want it to have touched 80% of our customers. So I know we're running a really proactive motion. So think about that in terms of the layers. And this becomes really important in if you're not hitting that main objective. So like I said earlier, that main business objective, you don't have total control over. So how do you present back to your customer in a really smart way? Hey, Mr. Customer or Mrs. Customer, these things that we have total control over, look how well we're doing. Look at the progress we're making. This is all part of that case to make your customer look really good, help them on that path to value, help you with your business case to renew. So again, what questions are we asking? Well, this is kind of simple. How do we know if this was being successful? How would we know if we were on the right track? Very simple when it comes to measures. And you'll see here I've put a couple of examples in again for my success plan. Hey, a measure might be 80% of customers have been touched proactively through that digital play. Then the next thing I expect to see is, well, if we're touching them proactively through this digital play, hopefully we're influencing their health score. So the next thing I expect to see is an increase in green accounts or an improvement in my forecast. Then the lagging indicator I expect to see is an X% increase in the gross revenue retention of that scaled motion, as an example. So this is how I think about 2 or 3 different layers of measures to help you know if you're on track, but also to help you with that conversation with a customer where maybe you're doing everything right and they're deploying all these strategies, but they're not quite hitting this business objective just yet. So that is an overview of the OGSM framework: objectives, goals, strategies, measures. Remember, there is no perfect success plan, but there are a couple of things that you can test yourself with along the way to know if you've done an okay job. The first one is you should be able to link every strategy back to a goal and back to an objective. The second one is you should not be able to complete this alone. If you as a CSM have built this entire success plan without speaking to your customer, something's gone really wrong. The point of a success plan is it should be built with your customer. You should ask all of the questions. They're giving you the information. You don't have to do that live. Like, you can ask all of the questions, you can make notes, you can take away, then you can build it on your own and you can present it back. But you should never be trying to build a success plan without the customer's input. Couple of reasons. One, you're lacking all of the context, but 2, you're then lacking the buy-in. Something that you build together gets a lot stronger buy-in than something you build on your own. And then final thing before I open up to any questions, and I'll stop sharing my screen to make sure I can see the Q&A really well, is it's not a one and done thing. Once you've built your success plan, I'm sorry to tell you, that is not the end. Like, we need to be continuously iterating on this success plan. So it's something that I would want to review every single month with my customer in my monthly sync. Mr. Customer, what's our progress? How are we tracking? Let's start with the measures. Have we made any progress towards these goals? If not, why not? Which strategies have we deployed? What's next? What's blocking us? How do we move forward? I want to start taking some baselines of these measures to see how our progress improves month on month. And then if it's not improving, then we rework our strategy. We try something different and we rework our success plan. The point being that you're always doing the right thing with a customer to get to that end goal. Hopefully, this has been a helpful overview of what a great success plan looks like, what's the point of a success plan, why we should all love them, because these are our easy path to build to renewal, but also giving you some pointers around how you think about structuring it, how you think about the questions that you ask along the way. I am going to stop sharing my screen and see if there's any questions in the Q&A. So we've got 10 minutes. If any of you do have any questions, please throw them in and I will try and answer them on the fly as we go. Okay, so there's a couple of questions in here. First one, for your team, do you expect success plans for all accounts? If so, how do you vary expectations across a portfolio? So assuming a CSM has 50 accounts, would you recommend a split like top 10 being detailed, updated weekly, 11 to 30 and below, maybe monthly, and below that might be quarterly? Hey, Finn, really, really great question. I think that in an ideal scenario, we have this for every customer. Is that realistic when you've got 50 accounts? No. So the way that I would probably think about this is, yes, having some kind of top tier. Now, that top tier might be based on spend. It might be based on a combination of spend and risk or growth potential. So, where I really want to focus in on this success plan is what are my highest spend accounts where if they go wrong, I'm going to open up a huge ton of risk in my book of business. Where do I feel like maybe I've got a bit of risk that I need to mitigate, or where do I have big expansion opportunities? And so then, yes, I would expect for that top tier, however you define it, to have a bespoke success plan. Below that, I think you can get pretty creative. And so one of the things that we did at my past company in scenarios like this is we had for each of the like top 5, top 10 most common objectives that you are speaking to your customers about, we would have a pre-built template of a success plan. And what we would do on the first of a quarterly call with a customer is we would show them the success plan, we would get their feedback, we would tweak and iterate, and then we would send that to them for them to execute. Now, this template was pre-built in a way that meant the strategies and the actions that fell off the back of it were like very self-sufficient for the customer, and the CSM didn't need to be as hands-on. And so, yes, I said to you, you should never build this without a customer, but I get that that's not feasible when you're running 50 accounts. And so I think that's when you get just a little bit smart about when you pre-build, share for feedback, and then you give it to the customer to go execute. And your quarterly touch point becomes, how are you tracking doing those things, Mr. Customer? What help do you need today? What can I unblock for you? Here's some resources that will help you go do that. Hopefully that's helpful, Finn. Okay, next question from Christina. I think similar kind of question. A success plan's only possible for VIP high touch customers. Bespoke, maybe yes. But again, I just think you can get smart about how you think about scaling this. I think in a true scaled space, absolute nirvana to me would be your sales team input the key like value driver or objective for that customer in the sales process, and maybe there's like they can choose from 10 or 15 or whatever that is, and then you get an automated digital play with a success plan and strategies and tips that are linked back to that particular objective. So again, I think there's ways of like getting smart and creative about executing that at scale. And then an anonymous question. Yeah, tongue-tied me there. How do you get buy-in from the EB to attend the QBR to build the success plan? Really good question. I think best in class, that buy-in from the EB comes pre-sales. So how we're doing that at Hook right now is when we are in a sales motion with a potential new customer, we've briefed the sales team to set expectations around what a great post-sales partnership looks like, where we want their involvement and why, so that we can go do these sessions. And actually what we have been trialing is trying to run this success planning session pre-sales whilst they are signing the contract, so that then you're teed up, you've got their buy-in to be able to go and run that motion. Now, I get that not everybody is in that perfect world scenario, and so that there are a couple of things that I would do here. One, it doesn't have to be on a QBR. Like you can set up a separate session with somebody with power, someone who's an EB or an exec sponsor. It doesn't have to be the economic buyer to know the objective. Like that can be anybody at the executive level. But you can set up a separate meeting to do that. And so there's a couple of ways that you can navigate that. You can try and do that yourself if you have a relationship with them. You can leverage your champion internally. So your main stakeholder who's really bought into working with you. Hey, I want to have a session to build a success plan. It's really important to me. Here's why. It's also going to help you look good, Mrs. Champion. Can you help tee that session up? Or if you're still struggling, you leverage an exec on your side to set up a meeting. And either you attend or you prep them with the questions in advance. And so there's some of the ways that I would get around that. Okay, a couple of other questions, a quicker one. What format would you generally present a success plan in? I'm not sure if I'm answering this question right, but I present it in the format that I'd shown. So the slide with the table that says objective, goals, strategies, and measures. And I present that to my customer, and quite oftentimes, I'm encouraging my team to type notes live. So rather than having a like polished version, we're in edit mode in PowerPoint or in Google Slides, and we're typing different things in into different places so the customer can see it and they can register it and they can give us feedback along the way. So that is generally how I would go about doing that. And then a question from Anna. Um, Great approach with segmentation on top tier accounts and bespoke success plans with templated for lower tier. Any additional input for a portfolio of 120 to 148 to 140 accounts without automated plans? Yeah, Anna, honestly, what I would do in your scenario is I would pick the three or the five like most common objectives for customers I speak to. And then as and when you work through these accounts, that could be maybe they're popping up as a risk and you're having a conversation with them. Perhaps you have a like quarterly touch point with every account. I would be asking them on that call or in that conversation, what's the thing that you care most about as a customer right now? What's the thing your business cares most about? Okay, let me show you a plan on how you can leverage our software to help you go and achieve that. I'm going to share it with you, and it's going to have a set of resources in there so that you can go and you can figure out how to go and execute on those things. And if you get stuck in our next quarterly touch point, I'm here for you. Or if you have an office hours or webinars or whatever that is. But very intentionally asking the question on that call, showing them a plan, sending it as follow up, and making sure that it directs them only to on-demand resources or things that you can do at scale. And hey, Anna, we used to do that in my old company with 80 to 100 accounts. We would have like a quarterly motion, quarterly touch point. And honestly, we just sat a group of three or four of us, I think, in a room, and we just wrote out these like example scaled success plans. Anna, if you or anybody else who's interested in that more like scaled side of the world, if you want to see an example of what that looks like, I can definitely hunt that out for you. So please like ping me on LinkedIn or find me after, and I'll happily share that as a resource. All right. Somehow we've ended up right on time. I actually can't believe it. Thank you for listening to me for 45 minutes talking about success plans, how much I love them, and what I think makes them great. I'm really hopeful that this content was beneficial. And if it was, please do a couple of things. Please come follow us on LinkedIn. We're going to send an email to all of you after with a couple of resources and a poll. Let me know if this was relevant, and if it was, what else do you want sessions like this on? What else do you want more of a workshop or an enablement style session on that fits within the CS or the account management or the customer growth space? Because we definitely want to do more of these things to add value to the community. But other than that, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun, and enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.